and welcome to Economic Divide. I'm Kavit Hawaii. Technology has long been called a double-edged sword. The internet, we all love it. And when it comes to cyber technology, well, that's a vast field. In this program, we're going to take a look at the economic impact that cyber theft has not only on people's lives, but on businesses. Coming up in today's program. Cyber world and cyber theft. The estimated cost of global cybercrime, $100 billion.
Cybercrimes is an attack that is carried out through the internet.
As far as I know, they've always been spying on businesses because they want to know where the money's spent.
And corporations, our listening campaigns have been having a big effect on our gross national product for some time.
Targeted industries, financial institutions, retailers, and restaurants.
They have access to the entire corporate network from this one store.
U.S. double standards.
No foreign nation, no hacker should be able to shut down our networks, steal our trade secrets.
The United States is probably leading the world with our ability to do this sort of espionage.
And the findings of Kaspersky Labs.
Recently, details have emerged of an unprecedented cyber robbery that targeted banks, e-payment systems, and other financial institutions worldwide.
The Wild West is how U.S. President Barack Obama has described cyberspace. Yes, we do live in the information age. We can freely roam the internet without supervision, even to places or sites that we're not supposed to visit. Yet, while the U.S. has been preaching others on how to use cyber technology, it is its main user for political espionage. Washington has notoriously employed the technology to spy on friends and foes alike. So the job of the Wild West referee, of course, Obama means that job belongs to the U.S. Technology has long been called a double-edged sword. This observation is best borne out when it comes to cyber technology, a field which causes both advantages and problems. In this program, we're going to take a look at the problems caused by this new technology. Actually, these problems are not few, and there is a plethora of them, which have inflicted huge losses on the global community.
With surveillance, everything that's either spoken on the telephone or transmitted via email or Skype or any sort of data, even keystrokes, of course, are being able to be monitored via computers.
Cybercrimes is an attack that is carried out through the internet on a person, an organization, a government, or a nation. And there's normally several reasons for why they could be doing this. Often it falls into the category of political, social, or religious activism, but also it can be for monetary gain, as in cybercrime.
There's a whole list of ways cyber crimes are committed. Exploits, where you get into the system itself. BOTNETs, where you control the DNS. Viruses, Trojans, scams. There's just so many ways that they're committed that, the list goes forever.
In a telling sign of the growing significance of cybersecurity, U.S. President Barack Obama called cyberspace the new Wild West.
Hello, Stanford! This cyber world is sort of the wild, wild west. It's one of the great paradoxes of our time, that the very technologies that empower us to do great good can also be used to undermine us and inflict great harm. We all know what we need to do. We have to build stronger defenses and disrupt more attacks. We have to make cyberspace safer. We have to improve cooperation across the board.
Certainly Microsoft is very much involved in providing backdoors with their software to make it easy, and then obviously all of our cell phones are wired for surveillance. That makes it very easy. And then of course this is talking about government entities. Certainly individuals are doing this too, using the internet and computers, but I think what we're talking about here is the effect of the listening surveillance programs from the NSA.
Hundreds or even thousands of these attacks take place every single day between all sorts of people and all sorts of organizations.
At the same place, the U.S. President signed an executive order designed to promote cooperation between the private sector and the federal government in grappling with cybersecurity breaches.
And today we're taking an additional step, which is why there's a desk here. You were wondering, I'm sure. I'm signing a new executive order to promote even more information sharing about cyber threats, both within the private sector and between government and the private sector. And it will encourage more companies and industries to set up organizations, hubs, so you can share information with each other. It'll call for a common set of standards, including protections for privacy and civil liberties, so the government can share threat information with these hubs more easily. And it can help make it easier for companies to get the classified cybersecurity threat information that they need to protect their companies. I don't really need to sit down because it's right here.
As far as I know, they've always been spying on businesses because they want to know where the money's spent. If there's like into billions of dollars spending it, they want to know. They can say they're building an extra room to a warehouse or something like that and cost, you know, $800,000, but there's not even a room there, and the money could have been spent somewhere else. So they're always looking at businesses to see where they're spending their money, who's supplying them. That's where I started doing after I got out of the Army. We were looking at big equipment companies, who was renting them, who was buying big earth movers, things like that, and what the money was being spent on, and you know, that they were reporting the right amount of money that they were actually buying it for and using it for what they said they were using it for, because they could be using it for anything.
Well, you know, we are a capitalist society. Everything is based on money and corporations. Our listening campaigns have been having a big effect on our gross national product for some time. The most recent example that you mentioned involving the Brazilian gas company is certainly a big one, but I think one of the biggest ones of all time, of course, was the data that was stolen from Airbus and provided to Boeing. This was back in the 90s, and this was before, you know, 9/11 and all of that. And you know, we've all forgotten that there was only a short period of time, or in fact, it was almost the day before 9/11 that the European Union was on the verge of tossing the NSA out of Europe because of their surveillance programs and the economic loss. But again, we really do have to understand that what is being billed as an anti-terrorist system is indeed a money-gathering system as well as a means of extortion, which of course is used also for changing policy as well as making money.
When it comes to U.S. spying these days, 3 letters come to mind immediately: NSA. The revelations by whistleblower hero Edward Snowden opened up the eyes of the world into how vast the U.S. spying was, and of course the intrusion into one's privacy, which has been called unconstitutional. But are you sure you're aware how vast it really is? Let's take Vienna's airport. Did you know passengers there were being spied on by the NSA? Of course, they call it the gathering of information. Or how about the UN office in Vienna? The IAEA is there. Spying there too? And OPEC? The following opens your eyes on how vast the surveillance program is.
Millions of people pass through Austria's busy airports on a weekly basis. Little did they know that the U.S. spying agency, the NSA, has been gathering their personal information. Following discussions with experts in Berlin, a member of the Green Party in Austria says the NSA accessed the data through hidden antennas placed on 3 buildings in Vienna.
Our air control is of major interest. Austrian airspace has been used in recent past for very special flight connections.
The hidden antennas were placed with the Special Collection Service, SCS, a joint enterprise between the NSA and the CIA. They installed the antennas on the roofs of the U.S. Embassy in Vienna, the IZD Tower near the United Nations headquarters in Vienna, and a villa owned by the NSA northwest of the capital in Wiering.
If the Americans can listen in real time, the phone calls, internet information, let's say from the Atomic Energy Commission, then they know much more what's going on with Iran, what's going on with Israel.
Earlier this year, Edward Snowden leaked information about 2 top-secret U.S. government spying programs under which the NSA has been eavesdropping on millions of American and European phone calls and collecting personal data online by hacking into servers of Facebook, Yahoo, Google, Apple and Microsoft. Besides the revelations that the NSA has spied on the UN and the IAA, in Vienna, German newspaper Der Spiegel has reported that the NSA, together with Britain's GCHQ, also infiltrated OPEC's computer systems.
I am a citizen of a European country and I find it unbelievable what the Americans are doing.
Yeah, so the example that you spoke of specifically there was one of the revelations that came out from the leak of the National Security Agency from the now notorious whistleblower Edward Snowden. And it was specifically talking about the Black Pearl program, in which the NSA was supposedly spying on private organizations, also public organizations from foreign countries, and extraditing information that one could be seen as sensitive and possibly even cyber espionage. Now, it's difficult to know. The leaks didn't say when they happened or why they were taking that information, or even the information that they were taking, but it certainly wouldn't be naive to assume that it could have been done for cyber espionage reasons. The NSA themselves have denied that, obviously, as they would, and they said that the reason that they do monitor or spy on foreign organizations is so that for foreign intelligence that could affect global markets.
Cybercrime and spying, it's big business, big businesses for the crooks. Yet its economic impact is huge on businesses due to the loss of business. The data is amazing. By the year 2017, the global cybersecurity market is expected to skyrocket to, believe it or not, $120 billion from just $63.7 billion in 2011. The annual cost of global cybercrime, $100 billion.
Two undesired outcomes of cyber technology has been cybercrime and spying, including both political and economic espionage. The political cost of bad use of cyber technology has been tantamount to losing the trust of its friends. While the U.S. has been preaching others on how to use cyber technology, it is its main use for political espionage. Washington has notoriously employed the technology to spy on friends and foes alike. The use of cyber technology for political spying has strained relations between Washington and its closest allies in the West, namely Germany, France, and other countries. The other countries which are targeted by the U.S. cyber espionage are in Latin America. These countries, which have adopted foreign policies independent of Washington, are on the blacklist of the U.S. governments, and among others include Brazil and Venezuela. The U.S. has defended its spying on other nations by claims that it is engaged in espionage on other countries only for the sake of security. Cyber technology has been used even against insiders in Washington. In the summer of 2014, the CIA Director John Brennan issued an extraordinary apology to leaders of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, admitting that the agency employees spied on committee staff and reversing months of furious and public denials. Brennan acknowledged that an internal investigation had found agency security personnel transgressed a firewall set up on a CIA network, which allowed Senate committee investigators to review agency documents for their landmark inquiry into CIA torture. The likely annual cost of cybercrime and economic espionage to the world economy is astronomical and stands at more than $445 billion, or almost 1% of global income. This includes both the gains to criminals and the cost to companies for recovery and defense. A conservative estimate would be $375 billion in losses, while the maximum could be as much as $575 billion. All these estimates are much lower than the eye-popping $1 trillion figure which was cited by the U.S. President Barack Obama, but it nonetheless puts cybercrime in the ranks of drug trafficking in terms of worldwide economic harm. The most important cost of cybercrime, however, comes from the damage that it does to company performance and to national economies.
They normally fall into two different categories in terms of how they actually are committed. The first is advanced persistent threats, otherwise known as APTs, and these are what you would normally find people talking about when they talk about cyber espionage, and that's for the reason of stealing information, intellectual assets. And the way that they do this is they carry out the attack over a prolonged period of time, quite a long period of time, constantly, a number of different attacks. And they'll do this through a number of different sophisticated ways, but normally it's with the view of planting malware or malicious programs into servers or networks or websites. And they would do that by going in through public servers or public websites, or through what they call social engineering techniques. And that's when they will plant the malware into a file or an email or a website, and they will try and entice a particular user to open that to expose the vulnerability in that organization.
Our estimate used data that takes into account the loss of intellectual property, the theft of financial assets, and sensitive business information, opportunity costs, additional costs for securing networks, and the costs of recovering from cyber attacks, including reputational damage to the hacked company. Our sources include published data, interviews, and estimates by government agencies and companies around the world.
The other way of doing it is through distributed denial of service attacks. Distributed is there when it's committed by more than one person, or just a denial of service attack if it comes from one person. And that is for the form of just disrupting a service. So often when you find that a website has gone down, that could be because of a denial of service attack. And it's normally, they will overload a server with, for example, communication requests to the point where that server can no longer respond to legitimate traffic, and so the network or the machine or the server will go down, and that service will be deemed untenable.
When was the last time that you heard a hacker, not a whistleblower, confess and talk about the way computer systems were hacked? Our guests have talked about the different ways operating systems get broken into, and we've looked at some of the economic results, but the following hack confession covered by ABC News from the U.S. was unique, yet it displays how vulnerable systems are.
I acknowledge that some of the things done were illegal.
The man in the shadow doesn't want you to know his name or see his face. We'll call him Derek, and for a time he was a cyber hacker, playing a role in a scheme to steal millions of credit card numbers from one of the largest companies in America.
I had never had any intent to commit fraud or steal anything. It was the actions of the other defendants that were, the actual defrauding.
The other defendants were Derek's friends, and their story begins on a night in 2003 when the trio was driving around town with their laptops, looking for weak spots in nearby companies' computer servers. In the cyber world, it's called war driving.
And one of the ones we noticed was outside of a Lowe's store. We looked around in there and we're like, wow, they have access to the entire corporate network from this one store. And from there, they were able to get into every cash register in the United States. In every Lowe's.
Kaspersky Labs, a software security group operating in almost 200 countries, headquartered in Moscow, Russia. It discovered recently that there was spying software that was installed in the hard drives of computers. Now, why is that relevant? This is why. The U.S. National Security Agency, the NSA, is the one who installed spying software deep within hard drives made by Western Digital, Seagate, Toshiba, and other top manufacturers, which gave them means to eavesdrop, believe it or not, on most of the computers in the entire world. The economic impact, unmeasurable.
There could be spyware lurking on your hard drive without you knowing it. Kaspersky Lab, a company with multinational partnerships that creates antivirus and internet security software, says it has discovered a method of hiding spyware within hard drives of personal computers. Some of the more popular hard drives include Seagate and Western Digital, which are used worldwide. The surveillance procedure is included in several spy surveillance programs that were discovered by Kaspersky. Even though the Russian-based company didn't specify who planted the software, it reported that the program is closely tied to STUXNET, a national security agency-related cyber weapon that was revealed to be used to attack Iran's uranium enrichment facility.
STUXNET, of course, was more than likely developed and delivered via Israel and the Mossad. So assuming that Israel and the Mossad and the USA are working hand-in-hand on these issues, certainly that would be fair to blame the United States for being involved in the STUXNET attack on the Iranian nuclear reactors.
They've been using those attacks forever, as far as I know. This is a unique worm that was created by an engineer that actually worked at a nuclear reactor plant. That's the reason it's so intense. I think the real question is who's going to pay for the collateral damage for something like that, because now it's inside up to 25 different power plants all over the world, and it also got inside Chevron's system here in the United States. So who's actually going to pay for the damage that this weapon created, even though it did what it was supposed to do, but it also did a whole bunch of damage to other great big networks?
These type of attacks happen on a daily basis now. The example that you spoke of specifically there, which was the Stuxnet attack on Iran's nuclear program, that was one of the more famous ones, particularly just because it was so devastating. You know, it infected more than 60,000 computers in that nuclear program. Now, the US didn't take responsibility for that. Obviously, they never do. Any nations, I don't think anybody's taken any sort of responsibility for these sort of attacks. But it has widely been reported that it was the US, and certain political commentators have said that the conflict between the US and Iran is history's first example of a cyber war. But I mean, these are happening all around the world every single day, and you know, the traditional way of war, fought by guns and fought by bombs, you know, that's not changing. But cyber war is almost being fought alongside that now, and increasingly so. People are calling it the silent war, because these are the type of conflicts that you can't see, but they're taking place every single day.
Kaspersky Lab is an international software security group. It operates in 200 countries and territories worldwide. It's headquartered in Moscow and has strong business partnerships in the United States and the United Kingdom. According to an anonymous source, spies have been able to access source codes for computer drives, allowing attackers to understand and control the hosting computer system. It's possible that NSA employees may have posed as software developers to gain access as part of the U.S.'s cybersecurity protocols. But investigated cyber targets appear to be very prolific. The surveillance software has been found on computers in 30 countries worldwide. Iran, Russia, Afghanistan, China, Mali, Pakistan, Syria, Yemen, and Algeria were particularly targeted. Institutions of interest included government and military organizations, energy companies, Islamic activists, and the media.
Kaspersky Lab also discovered the biggest online theft ever.
Recently, details have emerged of an unprecedented cyber robbery that targeted banks, e-payment systems, and other financial institutions worldwide, with the majority of the targets in Russia, the USA, Germany, China, and Ukraine. Behind the robbery is a multinational gang of cyber criminals from Russia, Ukraine, and other parts of Europe, as well as from China. Up to $1 billion American was stolen in about 2 years. The crooks grabbed these huge sums of cash by hacking banks, stealing up to $10 million in each raid. Kaspersky Lab and authorities from different countries have combined efforts to uncover the criminal plot. On average, each bank robbery took between 2 and 4 months, from infecting the first computer at the bank's corporate network to making off with the stolen money.
Ever since the internet was created, it's been organized around basic...
That's U.S. President Barack Obama talking about the cyber world. Now, what's interesting is that when the U.S. President is talking about how there's going to be not surveillance or eavesdropping or spying, the U.S. has been leading a double standard approach towards that, as evident by what the NSA has done.
The chance to thrive. No foreign nation, no hacker should be able to shut down our networks, steal our trade secrets, or invade the privacy of American families, especially our kids. So we're making sure our government integrates intelligence to combat cyber threats, just as we have done to combat terrorism.
The United States is probably leading the world with our ability to do this sort of espionage and destructive attacks on other people's electronic infrastructure and information infrastructure. Certainly we have been complaining about China recently, and of course Russia naturally doing this sort of thing, but clearly the United States has the most skill in this area so far.
Yes, I just couldn't say anything that could top that. That sums it up for this edition of Economic Divide. Our time is up. Do send us your questions or comments. We do appreciate them. All the links and addresses are below. Looking forward to seeing you next week.